What if I told you that everything we've been taught about Columbus's discovering America is a complete lie? What if there are shocking archaeological discoveries proving that African civilizations reached the Americas 1,000 years before Christopher Columbus was even born? The evidence has been deliberately buried by historians who don't want you to know the truth about African exploration. Picture this. 2,000 years ago, magnificent ships cutting through Atlantic waters, not from Europe, but from the gold-rich kingdoms of West Africa. While mainstream history textbooks tell you Columbus discovered America in 1492, a growing body of evidence suggests that ancient Africans were trading with American civilizations centuries earlier. The most compelling evidence? The Olmec colossal heads of Mexico. These massive stone statues, dating back to 1200 to 400 BCE, don't look Native American at all. They have distinctly African features, broad noses, thick lips, and helmets that mirror West African warrior dress. When archaeologists first uncovered these heads in the 1940s, they were stunned. But why isn't this taught in schools? Here's what they don't want you to know. African cotton and tamarin have been found in pre-Columbian American archaeological sites. These plants are native to Africa, yet somehow appeared in the Americas 1,500 years ago. How is this possible if there was no contact?
When Ivan van Sertima published They Came Before Columbus in 1976, the academic establishment went ballistic. His research pointed to a simple truth. African ships from Nubia and the Mali Empire were sailing across the Atlantic and establishing trade relationships with American civilizations. But here's the controversy Van Sertima revealed. The same metallurgical techniques used in ancient West Africa, specifically copper working and bronze casting, appear simultaneously in Mesoamerica with no evolutionary connection. The Olmecs were using the exact same methods as their contemporaries in Mali and Songhai empires, thousands of miles away. Dr. Barry Fell's research uncovered linguistic connections too. He found that American languages contain roots from West African Mande languages, not borrowed through later slavery, but embedded in ancient texts and inscriptions that predate Columbus by centuries.
Now here's where it gets really interesting from a biblical perspective. The ancient Egyptians, descendants of Ham, son of Noah, documented their trade expeditions. The Punt expeditions mentioned in Egyptian records? Some researchers believe these went far beyond the Red Sea, possibly across the Atlantic. Remember, the psalmist declared that Cush, ancient Ethiopia/Central Africa, would stretch out her hands unto God. These were a seafaring people with the technology to reach across oceans. The Queen of Sheba's legendary wealth didn't come from nowhere. It came from trade networks that potentially extended across continents. And let's not forget the Phoenicians, who were Africans according to ancient sources. They circumnavigated Africa 2,000 years before Europeans. If they could sail around Africa, what stopped them from reaching America? The mainstream academic conspiracy goes deeper than you think. They've classified over 400 ancient inscriptions showing African presence in America as hoaxes or misidentified. But when you examine the evidence yourself, you'll see something different.
Consider this. In 1978, archaeologists discovered African artifacts in the Tennessee River Valley. copper ornaments matching West African designs from the 12th century. The Smithsonian classified the discovery, and it disappeared from academic literature. Dr. Cloud Winsors found hieroglyphic inscriptions in Alabama that match ancient Libyan writing systems. Linguistic analysis shows these inscriptions predate Columbus by 600 years and contain African linguistic structures that couldn't have arrived through later contact. In 1998, Dr. Robert B. Freeman discovered genetic markers in Amazonian tribes that match ancient West African populations. The academic community dismissed these findings, but the evidence remains: African DNA in pre-Columbian American populations. Why suppress this? Because it shatters the narrative that Europeans discovered and civilized America. It reveals that African civilizations were sophisticated maritime powers exploring the world centuries before European expansion. The smoking gun? Ancient Roman and Greek texts describe African expeditions to a Western continent. These weren't fantasy writers. They were documenting actual voyages. Pliny the Elder wrote about African merchants reaching America. Diodorus Siculus documented Carthaginian expeditions beyond the Pillars of Hercules to a mysterious continent. The Carthaginians were African. Look, the evidence is overwhelming when you step outside the academic establishment's narrative. African civilizations had the maritime technology, the wealth, and the motivation to explore the Atlantic. The Olmec heads don't lie. The botanical evidence doesn't lie. The linguistic connections don't lie. We've been taught that European exploration was humanity's first reach across the Atlantic, but the truth is far more profound. Africans were exploring, trading, and connecting continents while Europe was still in the Dark Ages. The next time someone tells you Columbus discovered America, remember this: the evidence shows that African sailors were carving trade routes across the Atlantic centuries before Columbus was born. The question isn't whether they reached America, it's how many people in power are trying to keep this truth buried. What other historical facts have been deliberately hidden from us? The erased legacy of African exploration demands to be told. Please subscribe for more erased African history, and thanks for watching.